So this bike that's in this here bag has been, I guess, in the development process since 2019. So the last round in Snowshoe, me and Charlie flew from there straight back to meet the Dylan who designed this bike, who wanted us to test some bikes, and surprised us with this here high pivot bike. So we rode it once or twice. It was absolutely insane, but for whatever reason it took a long time to develop, but it's finally here. So yeah, here we are. We're about to find out. Woo! You can't even see the cool part yet. We're on.
Oh yeah.
Title, Brett Reader. Let's go, Brett. There it is.
High pivot.
First set of flat pedals.
No way.
Man,
They know the score.
I'm definitely putting them on to ride this for the first time, I
Yeah,
reckon.
yeah.
Find out how she goes on flats.
That's amazing.
Thank you, Chad.
That's a good size mug.
That's a good mug. Sick.
Oh, you can break this year. It's a good idea, that.
The story of the seat. So my first ever Trek that I got was from Ben Arnott when he worked for Trek World Racing. And this, I believe, was Brooke McDonald's seat from 2014. And I kept ever since. It went to Max, all sorts of bikes, and it's back here.
No, it's back.
On a Trek. Cool.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name's Cam McCaul, and I gotta say, I'm honored to be a part of the launch of this 2021 Trek Session. The Session is a bike that's been around for a long time. It has seen and done so much in the world of gravity mountain biking, from World Cup downhill racing to Rampage. It's performed so impressively over the years. It's not every day we get to see a new version, so I hope you share this enthusiasm. I've been a rider with Trek since 2004, which is right around the same time that Trek started the Session range. And that was a long time ago, back before even a session looked like a session. But the story of how we find ourselves here today, unveiling the newest incarnation of Trek's downhill weapon, that story started long, long ago. So far back, I only know one person old enough to even be able to remember. His name's Andrew Chandro, and he's joining us right now. Andrew, how's it going?
Cam, man, I miss you. How you doing?
Well, I miss you too, man. I'm doing great. I can see the big smile on your face. You're excited to unveil this bike to the world. It looks like you're hanging out in your sauna. You're very comfortable. And we're going to take this opportunity now with both of us on screen to kind of reel back the clock, take a trip down memory lane and bring it all the way back first to 2005. The first time the Session name showed up on a Trek bike, it was the Trek Session 77. We're looking at that on screen right now. Now, as you can see, this is kind of more of a free ride bike, but it started the Session legacy. You were very involved in the development of this bike. Tell me a little bit about that testing process and what the purpose of this particular bike was.
Yeah, that was sort of Trek's first foray into the free ride mountain bike world. And that bike is a long travel, single clamp long travel free ride bike and pedalable. But really, it was just developed for, riding the shore, super techy, gnarly stuff. but also having the ability to go in the bike park. And if you're up for climbing it uphill, you could do that as well. So it was a good bike, and it was well rounded.
Yeah, I remember having a blast on that bike. And that's the first bike to wear the Session name. But, hindsight's 2020, and looking at where we are right now with a new high pivot downhill bike, we got to reel back the clock even further and take a look back at 2003, the Trek Diesel. Look at that right there. High pivot, idler pulley. You put a ton of time in on this bike. It was a race focused bike, but you definitely proved that it had what it took to perform out in the desert, didn't you?
Diesel was designed as a World Cup race bike, but I rode that bike in 2003, and I was fortunate enough to get second place at Rampage on that bike. And yeah, 2003 Trek was we were in the high pivot game, and back a long time ago. So that bike was capable, again, very well rounded.
It was my first year at Rampage, and I watched you stand on the podium, and I was like so intimidated by this guy who's like coming from a World Cup background, good enough to get second place at Rampage. And then next thing you knew, I was on a team with you, going on team trips and everything. And I feel like it's pretty funny looking back at this photo. I learned a lot from you on this trip, but this was the first Session photo shoot.
That was such a memorable shoot. We were just outside of Virgin, Utah, and your energy was infectious, and you were lighting it up, and you were definitely impressing Sterl and I on that shoot. Maybe there were a couple of onlookers at some point, but that was a very memorable trip. And yeah, I remember it very well.
I'm pretty sure that was where you coined the phrase, Cam, quiet time, when it was time for me to just stop talking a little bit. But I had a great time on that trip. I learned a lot from you guys. I may have catapulted off a cliff, but that's a story for another day. Because this is all about the Session. And we can't talk about this new bike I have behind me without talking about the Session 10, 2006. A lot of hinting with this frame, what was to come in the world of downhill. Another high pivot with an idler pulley bike. And this one was back to the roots, more geared toward downhill racing. And you were involved in the testing of this one as well. Tell me a bit about the purpose of this bike and what it meant to you.
Yeah, we developed that bike, again, high pivot idler. We developed that bike as a World Cup race bike, but really as the free ride kind of scene was changing and evolving, that bike you could just send it. It was meant for just hitting big stuff, big gaps and whatever. And it was very, very capable. Again, Trek showing kind of like their history in terms of like the high pivot game. So.
Yeah, high pivot and idler pulley, we can look back and see has been a part of the DNA of Trek's experimenting in the past, but also just a part of the DNA here, crossing free ride and downhill, you chucking that Session 10 off a big cliff in Morocco. But then it was time to just start, putting this thing between the tape. And we got to look back to a very significant year for the Session, 2010. Tracy Mosley on the team, grabbing the World Championship title. She would go on to win 8 more World Cup rounds on the Session. And that was kind of what really started to prove, wow, this bike is a force to be reckoned with on the race course.
Yeah, Tracy was just a beast. I mean, an incredible rider, dominant both in downhill and in enduro. And I'm fortunate enough to still work with her. She works within the Trek kind of sports marketing group and looks after athletes similar to what I do in our roles. So she's an amazing athlete, awesome person. And Trek's fortunate to still have her on part of the family.
We'll get to present day right now, but I'll just hint at something. She's a mentor for the new Trek Factory racing team, which is great for the young riders. But we can't talk about the legacy of the Session without talking about Aaron Gwin, the time he spent aboard the Session. In 2011, he won a World Cup on the prototype carbon bike, and he would go on to win 9 more World Cup wins on a Session. And just little by little, people really realizing that this is a bike that is going to be shaking things up. I mean, now it had 38 wins on the World Cup, so it's the winningest downhill frame. But the Aaron Gwin era was so impressive.
Yeah, I mean, Gwin, no doubt, was incredibly impressive. He shook up the men's field for sure. He won 2 overall World Cup downhills titles on the Session. And he just made his stamp in the downhill world, and certainly for Trek in the Session.
And we talk about those 38 World Cup wins, 20 of them belonged to Rachel Atherton, and most notably her 2016 season, which was a perfect season, winning all the World Cups all the way through to World Championships. The Atherton era was definitely a very important one in the legacy of the session.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, what Rachel did in a perfect season, I mean, that's incredibly impressive, and I don't think we're going to see it again. I think it's
hot take.
Yeah, hard.
There's a hot take from the man in the hot sauna right there. I like it. And, we talk about World Cup downhill, but Rampage, this bike has been so present at Rampage, especially on the podium. Bring it all the way back to 2008 on that 26-inch aluminum bike. Brandon Semenuk winning his first Rampage. He would go on to win two more, one in 2016, one in 2019. But also Brett aboard a session, 2018, taking the win. You've been out there for all those years. It's pretty cool to be able to see this bike so powerful and dominant on the World Cup circuit, but at Rampage as well.
I mean, I think that's what's so incredible about the bike. It's what the downhill World Cup crew can do, and then the freeride crew can do, and what Brandon and Brett have done in Rampage just shows how versatile the bike is. And I've been fortunate to be there for those big days. So yeah, it's been very cool.
You've been there for all those big days, and you continue to be there right now as a team manager and mentor for the Trek Factory Racing team. And a huge moment for your team last season when Reese Wilson won the World Championship, crazy mud race. And in those times, it's the person who can keep their focus together. So I know you probably helped him out with that, but talk to me about that moment, getting that first men's World Championship title for a session.
Yeah, like another incredible moment. It was obviously a crazy year with COVID and racing and the schedule. And Reese came into that World Championships very prepared and confident. He was great from day one and first practice run, and he pulled off the win. And that's the first male downhill World Championship win we've had. And he won it on the session. And it was an incredible day for Reese, the whole TFR crew, team, Trek, the whole Trek family. So another special day, and I feel fortunate again to be there.
The stars are aligning for a great season, 2021 for Trek Factory Racing. I mean, you got Charlie Harrison, the always entertaining Cade Edwards, and then two big names for the team this year, Loris Vergier and the phenomenon Valley Hall. I know you guys are going to kill it this year. And how excited are you to kick off this season with this new team and this new bike?
Yeah, everyone's just itching to get out there and race. We're going to be racing here soon enough, but we're so excited. We have an incredible team, and then obviously with Valley on the RockShox Trek Racing team, and with Loris new to the program this year, we're pretty stacked. We're fortunate, and we're excited to get going.
Well, Andrew, thanks for joining us here today on this webinar to talk about the 2021 Trek session, but also just thanks for your involvement all the way back to the beginning, even the diesel, and then seeing where we are here right now. It's fun to be able to take that trip down memory lane and kind of see how this bike evolved and some of the history behind it. So get out there, do some cross-country skiing. We'll see you around, Andrew.
Thanks, Cam. Good to see you.
Later. All right, so from Andrew Shandro, we got to now check in with the people behind the scenes with the development of this bike. Let's go to mountain bike director John Riley and session lead engineer Dylan House. Guys?
Hey, Cam. Thanks for throwing it over here. Awesome to see Cam and Chandra there, two icons of Trek, really important pieces of the development of the session bike, and bringing us here today with, again, Dylan House, who's pretty much the father of the session bike. He's been there since the beginning, working on that. He works in the advanced R&D development for Trek. And we want to take the time here with Dylan to kind of go over now some of the technical features of what we're offering in the new 2021 version of the session. So Dylan, let's jump right to the big question, right? So, we're going to high pivot on this bike. We've been there in the past. Why high pivot now? Like, what are the advantages and why are we doing it for 2021?
So it's looking back to what worked before. When we went from the session 10 to the session 8, we put all our new stuff at the time. We did full floater, the EvoLink, ABP, that was such a different bike to the Session 10, and it just felt so much better, but it was much lighter. It had a different ride quality, a very different stiffness, way different braking performance, different leverage rate on the shock. It was just a different working bike. So it worked great. It was a big improvement over that bike at the time. We refined and refined and got to the point of finally reaching a point of going, hey, let's take a look back at that one other aspect that was really great about that bike. And that was the traction and bump absorption from that high pivot.
Okay, so let's walk through that. Like, tell us kind of in a little more detail, what happens with a high pivot bike? Why does it work better, especially in that high speed chundery terrain? You know, there's just a really different sensation to the bike with that. You know, how does that happen and why does that happen?
So with the high pivot, you're moving this pivot up here that the suspension pivots around. That makes the wheel move in a bigger arc, a different arc. And the wheel now moves backwards much more as it moves up. So the bike's going this way, but our bumps are going this way. So now the rear wheel can move with the bumps in that rearward direction. So it's got more time to get up and over those bumps without being thrown upwards. It can track over those easier. Keeps the bike feeling smoother, especially in that high-speed rough terrain.
So another important element, right, of a high pivot bike is having a pulley system built into that to allow for the chain growth and the other effects that you have with that. Tell us a little bit about that and, you know, what we're doing with our cog system here to help balance the bike out.
So the idler cog, the pulley there, is really what allows that high pivot system to work. On any full suspension bike, as this rear wheel moves up, it moves further and further away from the bottom bracket. That growing distance means the chain would have to stretch to accommodate that. Well, obviously, the chain can't stretch. So what you feel is pedal kickback. So as you're either on the brakes or pedaling, trying to keep those pedals moving, the chain wants to pull them backwards. You're fighting that by pedaling going this way. So you don't feel the cranks actually lifting you up, but what you feel is the suspension not reacting to that. On our old session bike, we had about 27 degrees of pedal kickback. A high pivot would increase that even more. But with the idler, it breaks that up and basically gets it down to around 8 degrees. Almost nothing.
I mean, that's a great thing. I mean, that's taken a lot of that kind of like feeling of the bike through your feet away. So that it just calms the bike down underneath you. I think you'll hear some different descriptions from the riders about the calmness of the bike because it's doing such an efficient job of tracking the terrain and moving over the bumps.
Yeah, it just lets the suspension keep working in those situations where you're pedaling or braking and fighting against that pedal kickback. So much smoother, more supple, responsive suspension.
Yep, for sure. And there's some other things that we've done here that I think are pretty trick too. You know, things that were really developed from years of working with World Cup racers. You know, previously we have had different links that would offer different leverage rates for riders, and riders would use them whether between air and coil or different terrains or different riding style. We thought that's a pretty cool feature, and we built it in now to the bike. So instead of swapping links, all you have to do is flip the minnow link and you can change the leverage rate from 20 to 25%. It's a new feature on this session. It's found on the bottom of the mount there for the shock. Tell us a little bit about that and what that does for the rider.
Yeah, as you said, we were doing that with custom links, and to go along with that, we have to have custom shock mounts. But that was a team-only thing. We were custom making these for riders on the team. And as you said, it was different conditions, different riding styles, different rider preference, and even some of them swapping one time this one that time. It's a lot of parts to make, it's a lot of parts to manage for the race team, and it's only available to the pros. We've done it now, we've built it into the bike, like you said. We've got the shock minnow chip down here. You just flip that one direction or the other, and it's available. It's clean, it's easy, it's lightweight, and it's now available to everybody. And it's just one more way for somebody to tune the bike to their liking, their terrain, their riding style, their shock choice, and get a bit of that pro feature trickle down to everyone.
Right, which is awesome. And I mean, that's the goal, right? When we develop bikes, is to bring more and more, features to the riders from what we learn on the World Cup and downhill circuit. So again, let's kind of talk. We do, continue with our MinnoLink system, which adjusts the BB height and head tube angle. We'll come back to that because there's some features there with the the ability to change the wheel systems or wheel sizes on the bikes. We'll come back to that. That's an important subject. But I think the other one is aluminum. So one thing that we're going to have is aluminum only in the new sessions. We've had carbon and aluminum in the past. And aluminum wasn't just because it was the material that was cost savings or easiest or whatever. It was really from direct feedback from the racers, right?
This was direct feedback from the racers. One of the first tests we did with the team was with a prototype of this bike. They were so blown away with the working of the system, they actually said they would take it right then and there in this mule form, which is something we've never had with pro riders in a test situation like that.
Right.
They're very in tune with their current bike. They don't want to change. The advantages were so clear. They were like, yeah, we'll take it. But something else we found in that test is they were actually preferring the feel of that aluminum frame. They wanted that. They were not after the weight savings and some of the other things we get with carbon and the other characteristics that fit in better in different categories of cycling. It was all about the material feel, the way that the material responds, the way the material snaps back, say in a corner when you push that bike and flex it and it returns. It was a different feeling to them, and it was a feeling that kept the bike calmer to them. And they said, hey, we want aluminum. This is what we want. And it actually changed the project for us. We were going carbon and pulled it back and went, okay, alloy, because that's what they're actually asking for.
Right. And so there's a lot more to talk about with this, but before we get even further into some of the tech details, I want to throw it back to Cam and get another perspective from our racers on this new product development.
Thanks, guys. It's great to be able to hear straight from the horses' mouths what goes into developing a bike optimized for just smashing over the rough stuff. So really cool to hear the ideas behind designing it, but we talk so much about the riders and that first test session. It would be great to hear from them and their first experiences with the bike. If we're able to connect here, Charlie Harrison and Reese Wilson, be able to see if we can talk to them. Look at this, we got them live on screen. Thanks for joining us, Reese Wilson right there and Charlie Harrison. And we're talking about the new session. A big part of the origin story with the new frame is this test trip that you guys took in Mountain Creek, New Jersey. It sounds like it was a pretty cool experience, and I want to hear it straight from you guys. Charlie, you were coming off a big result, 3rd place at Snowshoe, West Virginia. This happened in August of 2019, so this has been in the works for a while. And who was all present for this test trip, and what was it like having that whole bike park locked down just for you guys to have that private test?
Yeah, it was super sick. End to a crazy year, and we had the trip planned to go test, and we went, and Trek rented out Mountain Creek for us, which is awesome. I've always enjoyed going to Mountain Creek a lot. Instantly, we were just like, man, we got to race this thing. Like, we got to get this going. So it was definitely a really cool experience, and got us so psyched to finally get to the end result of this bike, which is where we're at now.
I'm sure Jose and Dylan were really excited, just as much as you guys were excited to try it. They were probably excited to get feedback from you guys. And Charlie, you were coming off of, a lot of momentum. Reese, if you think back to that trip, you had a few stitches in your leg, didn't you? You were pretty banged up at the time.
Yeah, that trip wasn't going too good for me at the start. I had a big one at Mont Saint Anne at World Champs. I think just the week before we went to Snowshoe. So yeah, Snowshoe was a bit of an uphill battle for me, but it was a really cool track, and I couldn't believe the fans and everything that came out. So that made up for the bad result and the stitches in the leg. And then yeah, getting asked to go and test this bike was something I've never had before. That's kind of special treatment where it's just you and one other rider, and it's like special ops mission. You've got to keep super quiet, and yeah, really really cool. And like Charlie said, the moment we stepped on the bike, first run, we got told not to say anything when we got to the bottom, so it wouldn't affect each other's results, like what we thought of the bike. And I just trying to hold the smile down on my face. I think I had to go away. I couldn't stop grinning, and I just wanted to tell Chuck how sick it was before he rode it. It was crazy, really cool.
That's such a good sign. I mean, the main factor with this frame is the high pivot. Reese, For anybody who's watching this and has never ridden a high pivot full suspension bike, how can you explain the difference? What are some of the benefits you noticed right away the first couple laps on it in the test session?
Yeah, bike's totally different. It feels quite, what I call is numb. I don't know, for a lack of better words, it's quite, there's not much happening, but that is basically because it's doing such a good job of soaking up what you're hitting. That the rearward axle path changes where the bumps are hitting on the wheel, and that really does affect the suspension platform on a whole. So, and definitely for the better. Those really fast, rough tracks, it's really going to excel at those for sure.
Having that progression chip, you can actually change the progression with just flipping that chip over to the bottom of the shock mount. Charlie, you running 25% or you running 20? It sounds like you're probably ramping that thing up as much as possible.
Yeah, straight to 25. I haven't even ridden it in 20.
How about you, Reese?
Yeah, I'm the same. As far as I'm aware, the 25 chip is it's more the race setting. Like that's kind of what they had planned for. So I was the same. As soon as I got that knowledge, straight to 25 and forget about it.
Another really interesting feature about this bike is the fact that it allows you to run whatever wheel size options you want. You can run full 29er, you can go mullet, or you can actually just run it in full 27.5. Charlie, what are you choosing to run for the races, or is it on a track-by-track basis you make that decision?
I'm just full 2.9. I've been full 2.9 setup for years now, and I've got pretty long legs, so I don't really struggle with any of the things that the guys will quote that go towards the mullet. You know, not being able to get over the back wheel.
Reese, I got two questions for you. First one, same question as I just asked Charlie. I'm curious what wheel size you're running, but also, is there any apprehension? I mean, you're the current world champ, and you're going to take the bike that you won world champs on, set it aside, and usher in this new one. Is there any hesitation for swapping out something that was working so well?
Yeah, good questions. Question one, I think mixed. I'll be predominantly mullet, so the 27.5 in the rear, 29 in the front. Most tracks that'll suit me, but exactly like Charlie said, that the reason for that is because I really struggle I've got quite short legs for how tall I am, and I've got a long range of movement. I really like to use my legs when I ride, and I squat quite deep sometimes, so just having that little bit of extra room is really nice for me. But yeah, jumping from the old bike onto this, the first day I was a little bit like, oh dear, this is different. I don't know if it's better yet, because I spent so long with my mechanic Joe getting the old one set up that it was a little bit scary. But after, I think I've done 4 days solid on it now, real good, and the new shock today, I'm feeling pretty confident about it. So yeah, I'm really excited to get stuck into a bit more testing and see what we can do with it.
With that said, what are some of the stops, Charlie, that you're looking forward to the most? What are some of your favorite tracks you think this bike's going to perform well on this year?
Well, I think it's going to perform well on pretty much all of them. Like I said, I can't state how good this bike is. Like I told the guys numerous times last year, you know, when we were seeing if there was any possible way we could race the bike last year, it was like I told them, like, if you gave me this bike a week before whatever race it is, the first World Cup, like I would hop on it without doing any testing and race it. Like that's how confident I am in the bike.
A lot of people, myself included, are really excited to watch you guys hit the World Cup circuit this year and get to watch you on this bike. Reese, same question. Which stops are you most looking forward to?
Yeah, there's a lot of good tracks on the circuit this year, so I'm really excited to get to them all, to be honest. Definitely the really, really fast, rough tracks that you normally dread, or in previous years I have kind of dreaded going to, is where this bike I think is really, really going to excel.
Man, just hearing you guys talk about all these stops that you're looking forward to and talking about how great this bike is, it makes me really anticipate throwing a leg over the one I have behind me. And I would love it if I was able to do some laps with all you guys, the whole team, maybe in Whistler or something, if we ever get back there. But most of all, I just want to thank you guys for giving us the time and reminiscing about your involvement in the development of this bike. It's hard to keep on the stand. It wants to go. It's such a fast race bike. So thank you for developing it, and thanks for joining us here today. And right now we're going to take this opportunity to throw things over to Ted Alsop, who's going to talk to us about wheel size.
Hey, thanks, Cam. So as we've been talking about, adjustability is a huge part of the new session. Here in front of us, we have all three wheel size configurations. So we're just going to take a quick look at how we set each one of them up. We'll start over here with our full 2.9er wagon wheel race bike. This is how the session comes out of the box. 29-inch wheels, front and rear. No setup required for this guy. In the middle here, we have our mullet setup. So same 29-inch front wheel and fork from the previous setup. And now we have added a 27.5-inch rear wheel. In order to get the geometry to be the same between the two platforms, we're going to put our suspension minnow link into its high mode. What that's going to do is that's going to lift our bottom bracket back up and put the head angle right about where it is on the 29-inch option. And finally, we have our full 27.5-inch option. So for this setup, just like the previous bike, we're going to run a 27.5-inch rear wheel. We're going to run our minnow link in the high mode. And now we're going to add a lower headset cup. So this spacer cup will lift the front end of the bike back up to compensate for the difference in the front wheel. We're still running our 29-inch fork, so no fork swap needed for this. And now we've got a 27.5-inch front wheel. A couple other really cool racer-focused setup options are, we have our minnow link that we've been talking about, so if we're changing our progressivity. So at the lower shock mount down here, there's a chip. When flipped in its rearmost position, we're going to have 25% progression, and when it's in its forward position, we're going to have 20%. Another really cool option that we've added is a removable down tube guard. So we see a lot of damage to down tubes from rock strikes. Now we have a removable guard, so you can freshen up the guard if it gets thrashed from use. We've also substantially increased its coverage, so it has a lot better coverage around the bottom bracket, full down tube to keep your bike looking nice. Really nice 3 bolts, take it on and off. Finally, something we haven't even talked about yet is we have a new external cable routing option. So as you can see on this 27.5 setup, we have several cable stop bosses underneath the top tube. So this lets you, if you're at a race in a hurry doing a brake bleed, you can change lines and not have to run them back to the frame. We also have an internal routing option that's going to be the stock setup on the other bikes. So as you can see, we have quite a few racer-focused, rider-focused tunability options on the new session. I'll send it back to you, Cam.
Thanks a lot, Ted. So cool to see how many options there are to fully fine-tune your ride toward your preference, but you still have to decide what size frame you want to run. There's 3 sizing options, and they've adjusted the structure of those sizing options a little bit. For more on that, let's throw it back to John Riley and Dylan Howes.
Cam, thanks again. Again here at HQ with Dylan and talking now about the sizing of the bike. We have changed things up in the sizing structure for the session going forward. Basically, we've acknowledged that when you look at a downhill style bike like this, it's all about the reach of the bike, and that's the most important way to fit the bike properly for your usage. So we've gone to 3 sizes. We're calling those sizes, R1, R2, and R3. And to get some detail on those sizes, I got Dylan here again. So Dylan, 3 sizes. Do we cover the same range we have in the past? And how long have we gone with the longest?
Yes, so we cover the same range of people as we have in the past. The bikes have gotten longer, as have most mountain bikes. We're getting longer and longer reaches. What we've done on this bike is, mountain bikes have always been measured with a seat tube length and a reach length. Yep. Well, this one, we've kept all the seat tubes low. We're not trying to get your saddle up to pedaling height for tall people. Everybody runs it low. So the seat tube is low. The top tube on all these bikes comes in at the same spot. So we've kept the standover about the same across the range of sizes. This lets you just pick the bike based on reach. So you can pick the size of reach you need or the size of reach that you want. A taller person wanting a longer bike for racing can go up to that longer size. That same person, for same height person, for riding in park or a different situation, might want a shorter bike for that more responsive, playful feel. You can size it that way based on what you know for reach or need for reach, without regard for worrying about your saddle being too high or too low, standover being too high or too low. It's just length.
And how about length? What's the longest length we're doing now? Is it grown from what we've done in the past?
It's grown quite a bit from what we've done in the past. We're now up to a really long length on these extra larges, going to fit really tall people really well. But again, it's just about that extra length for everyone.
Right. I think, the cool thing there is whether you're, a park rider or a downhill racer, you can look at the bike and look at the reach numbers and make a good decision about what bike works best for you and not worry about where that saddle, would be in the way for you on the bike. So
exactly,
really cool on that. And then, when you do that, all the bikes are getting longer and slacker, and that, but we really want to do a good job of balancing the rider on the bike for best performance. And we've made a change with this bike as well, where now the chainstay length changes with those sizes as well. So between those three sizes, you end up with 3 different chainstay lengths. Tell us a little bit about that and why we did that.
Yeah, so we've got the size-specific chainstay length on these bikes. When we design full suspension bikes, we've typically had the same rear center length, the same chainstay length across all the sizes. That means you've got your weight split between front wheel and rear wheel. But as you go to a longer and longer size, that front wheel keeps moving out. So your weight bias keeps moving rearward as you go up, meaning taller sizes have a harder time keeping weight over the front wheel. What we've done here is as we increase the reach on the front, we've increased the length on the back. So you maintain that weight balance better across all the sizes, giving everybody more of that more consistent performance feel, more consistent traction and weight balance.
All right, so that's some fit stuff, Cam. Let's take it back to you and maybe get some more riders' input, which is always fun to hear.
Obviously, so much excitement around the 2021 season when it comes to Trek Factory Racing because of this beautiful brand new bike you have sitting behind me. But that's not the only source of excitement. 2 huge names in the world of downhill racing joining the Trek family, Loris Vergier and Valley Hall. And if the magic of the internet serves us well today, we should be able to have them join us on screen. Let's see what we got. Look, there we go. Loris and Valley, how's it going?
Awesome, thank you.
Great. Well, it's great to have you guys on the team, but it's also great to have you here right now. I want to pick your brain about your excitement around the new team news and also this new bike. First, I'm going to start out with Valley. Valley, this is your first year on, a big team with a ton of support around you. And I'm sure things have been a little bit weird transitioning in the middle of a pandemic, but so far, what has the experience been like moving over to Trek?
Well, it's only been me and Matt basically the last 3 years, and it's going to be a big difference, but I just wanted the change and I wanted to have more people around me and to have more knowledge around me. So even like with having Jamie, my teammate on the team, who did really well last year, and then having the extended Trek Factory Racing with like crazy riders, and maybe I can even like hang out with them or go riding one day, and I can learn a lot of them. And don't forget the mentors like Tracy Mosley and Andrew Chandru. I mean, I always wanted to have kind of a mentor in a team, but it never kind of happened that I got into a team where I can look up to someone. And I think Tracy can teach me a lot.
Oh, that's going to be such a perfect recipe for you to be around other young riders, but have those master Yodas there above you to just, everything from the physical stuff with line choices, but also just the mental aspect of being on the starting line. How has it felt so far? Have you been able to get some good testing in on the new session?
Well, actually, I just spent 1 day on the new bike. It was a bit difficult for me because my first time back on the bike, I just spent time on the e-bike and on the enduro. And I did it kind of on purpose to not go too fast, too quickly. And then on the last day before I left and to go back home, I said to Matt, I need to ride the new bike because I can't leave my first riding week without like spending time on the new bike. And even though like I was still super slow, I just loved it. It's so easy to get used to. And it's super smooth. It's not crazy to get into it.
So Loris, this may be Valley's first big team, but you've been a part of a couple big teams in the past. What was it like making this transition in 2020 off season?
Yeah, obviously a big move for me again. Like I switched team back in the days, but this time is for real. Like I'm turning 25 this year, and I felt like it was the right time to go to the right team, and I'm super pumped. And I think this year is gonna be one of the best, I hope, and I'm happy to be welcomed in the Trek family.
I'm excited to see how that dynamic plays out. It's going to be a cast of characters underneath that Trek Factory Racing tent. Charlie, yourself, Reese, and then just the wild man, Cade. It's going to be really interesting. But let's talk about the bike for a second, all right? So I know things have been weird with the pandemic, but I'm curious how much time you've had on the new bike. But I'm also curious if you were able to test out the old bike before getting on the new one to be able to identify any of the differences.
So when I got the opportunity to ride the old bike in December, the first thing I felt was like it's really agile and light, and I felt comfortable. I really liked it. I like on my home track, I was like as fast or faster, so it was a really good thing. But I wanted to get a feel for it, and in expecting the new bike, just have like a knowledge and something to say about what's going on. And when I got the new bike, I felt like I was comfortable straight away. Like I think the alloy make it feel a little bit more supple and compliant. You can ride like a little bit more aggressive without the drawbacks. So it's just more planted. The way it works is just, yeah, you feel comfortable. Like I felt really comfortable straight away. And yeah, I felt so stoked about it. Like the high pivot makes it even better when it's steep and rough. So the rougher it is, the better it is. And that's why, yeah, I'm looking forward to go racing with it.
So that was your feelings on the bike in words, but you're so good at describing things without words. If you had to describe the new session in a sound, no words, what would it sound like?
Oof. The old one would be more like ta 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 ta, just like not jumping around but light feel. And the new one's just like a little bit less, just planted.
You can run any wheel size configuration you want on this new bike. So what do you think you're going to be gearing towards? Full 29, mullet, or full 27.5?
So far I've been riding the mullet quite a lot. I've tested once or twice like the full 29, and it ended up like being really good, at least as fast. So it's a good thing. I mean, when the track is a bit faster and you need rolling speed, I feel like maybe full bill would be that type of track. So I'm thinking about that. But so far the mullet feels just, yeah, my bike. I want to ride the mullet and I want to ride it more often. But I mean, if the track doesn't allow it, I'll probably go full 29. And that's the good thing about the new bike too. Like it's good either way, and you just want to go fast either way. So that's the best part.
I want to ask Valley the same question. Valley, what wheel setup, considering that you can choose any wheel size configuration you want on this bike, what do you think you're going to be using the most during this coming season?
Well, like I'm also like super short, but I've always been on full 29er, like back on the old bikes. But I'm super stoked to try out the mullet. I did ride it the one day, and it feels nice to not always hit your ass with the tire.
For sure. One question for you, Loris. Who are you going to argue with over a suspension setup with this new team?
That's the good question. I'm going to argue with everyone. I'm going to talk about it with everyone now. I'm going to bother everyone in the pit. Like, hey. But the good thing now is the suspension is actually like not simpler, but you have less knobs to turn. So I can, be less weird, and it's going to be perfect. So far, it's really good. I'm stoked, like for real. So, yeah.
Well, Loris and Valley, thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to watch you race this new bike, and it was great talking to you about your first impressions. Right now, we're going to send it back to Trek HQ. John Riley is going to explain everything there is to know about the whole session range this year. Riley?
First, I do want to kind of talk about the lineup. It's a nice, tight lineup of bikes. There's two models that are complete bikes, and then there's a frame set. We have the Session 9 here. The Session 9 will be the top of the line model. This will be basically our race replica bike. It'll come with the top of the line in the RockShox suspension and drivetrain. And again, all the features that we discussed about the new frame. We also have a great bike in the Session 8, and this is where we offer a great value to the privateer or the Grom that's looking to get into, a really high-level performance bike at a good price point. Still, with a great spec, get you, with the coil there, with the boxer front, good all-around group to get going on a downhill bike. And then there's a lot of people too that want to get a frame set. And so we will have the 9 frame set available, and this will allow you to build it to your heart's desire. You can do whatever you like. And just a couple notes on that. The frame set will come with the extender cup that we described if you are going to run 27.5. The complete bikes will not. So the complete bikes will come set up 29er front and rear, and you do have the capability of going mullet by replacing the rear wheel with a 27.5 and just changing the minnow position on the bike. But we will be able to get the extender cup aftermarket through Trek if you do elect to go full 27.5 on your bike. Thank you very much, and I want to send it back to Bend, Oregon, and Cam McCaul for a final wrap-up.
Thank you to John Riley, Dylan Howes, Andrew Shandro, Ted Alsop, and everybody behind the scenes making this webinar possible. And most of all, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you out on the trail. Good night.
Yeah.
Do you live in Innsbruck Valley?
No, I live in Saalbach. It's like next to Leogang.
No, I know Saalbach. You live
Yeah?
in the town of Saalbach, Interglemm. No way.
Well,
That's
I
where I
actually
did my
live in
first
a lodge
ever
on the mountain. But...
Oh, perfect. So that's
Your first
sounds
ever
about
what?
right. That's where you want to be. I did my first ever slopestyle contest in Saalbach.
Oh, the
That
Adidas
was
one.
my first. Yeah, that was my first time flying to Europe and my first time getting drunk, and I got good memories. Well, kind of memories at Saalbach. Okay, you guys. Hey, thanks so much. Good luck, and I hope to see y'all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.